share with you a brief presentation on a complex subject, which is why design thinking matters. Before I get started, I want to reassure you that what I'm going to tell you about is easy to understand, it's digestible, and most importantly, it is easy to act upon. However, typically when people talk about design or innovation or the future of everything, you tend to hear very formulaic things. So I promise you, there will be no talk about Airbnb not owning any hotels, about Uber not owning any cars, and certainly there will be no talk about Henry Ford and his bloody faster horses, right? There will also be no talk of Steve Jobs and his quotes. For a very long time, I've been obsessed with understanding how creativity and commercialism can collide. I spent a very large part of my life in the art world. And in the art world, creativity is absolutely king. Commerce is merely a byproduct of creativity. I have a love of art, and I have a love of being creative. From a very early age, my deep fascination and expression of creativity was actually fancy dress. Halloween is my favorite time of year, and I roped in multiple friends to join me on that journey. But I digress. In the bid to try and understand how creativity can collide, what I looked to do is I looked at different worlds and how they juxtaposed each other. As I said, the art world is obsessed with creativity. It's king. The business world is obsessed with money. And in looking for money and in looking for those two worlds to collide, my journey ended, but it also began with design thinking. Here, I just want to show you a little about the art world. The art world's an unusual place in that in the art world, very expensive products, luxury items, are bought by people that own their own money. And when I say own their own money, art that sells for 100 million. Collectors tend not to buy art that they don't own the money first. Dennis Hopper and Larry Gagosian are two of the biggest art collectors and dealers in the world. And then yet business, on the other side, tends to ignore creativity. Can anybody recognize this image? This is an image of the Museum of Product Failure in Ann Arbor. This image demonstrates all of the products and services that have failed in the last 20 years. The museum actually had to close due to the constraints of capacity. It was getting, on average, 400 to 600 products a quarter. So business can fail to understand really how to bring creativity together. But let's first talk, before we get into design thinking, what is design? First off, it's been around for a really long time. It started its early days in looking at how to make things look nice, from the clothes of Coco Chanel and the graphics of Saul Bass, to electronics, to architecture of Zaha Hadid. It started to then move into applying meaning to things. Services, experiences, all became design-led. And laterally today, we look at business models, which are now Howard Schultz of Starbucks, demonstrating one of the most powerful design-led business models in the world, that being Starbucks. So design has had a long history. So what then is design thinking? Herbert Simon, who was one of the very early academics around design, said, "It is the change of existing conditions into preferred ones." A less academic and more contemporary definition is from this woman, Jean Liedtke. Design thinking is a human-centered approach to problem solving. So what does that actually mean? Design is, first and foremost, a process. It begins with empathy. You cannot be creative if you cannot have empathy. The good news is even bankers are hardwired for empathy. And this first part of the process means you sit and you listen and you understand the real problems of real people. The second phase is defining what those problems are. This is possibly one of the hardest parts. Design is first and foremost not necessarily about problem solving, but actually setting the problem in the first place. Once you have really understood and focused on the problems, you move into ideation. You'll have seen the coloured post-its, the pens, all that crazy stuff, all that fun stuff that happens during ideation. But ideation is absolutely useless if it is not founded on good insights. And insights come from empathy. The fourth part is prototyping. Prototyping is a rapid, lo-fi way of getting your product or service out into the world. It helps you have rich conversations with your users. And finally, you test. Actually getting a lo-fi prototype out into the world and understanding how do people respond to it, listening to their needs and designing accordingly. So that's the process, that's the formula, that's how it works. Design thinking is also a lot about constraints. We live in a world of wants and needs. I want to go on holidays, but I need to work to earn the money. Design, the right and left side of the brain coming together, is the constraints, is the creativity of getting those two things to come together to get a solution. So how then do we use design thinking? Well, in Bank of Ireland, we've been around for a very long time, 234 years. Yes, we are going through the fourth revolution, and we all know about the huge change and shifts that are happening in our society. But we are a company that has been founded during the French Revolution, during the Napoleonic Wars. We have survived World Wars I and II, the Civil War, multiple bank crises, multiple presidencies. We brought the first pass card and ATM and other disruptions to Ireland. So we understand what it means to be around this level of change. So how are we using it in Bank of Ireland? We are using it to create shared value. We are using it to look at societal and business value coming together to create shared value for all. We are using it to look at how to make a difference in people's lives. In 2016, we looked at the lives of entrepreneurs. From 2013 to 2016, something different was happening in Ireland. To take you back, Ireland was coming out of the grips of a recession. Unemployment was high, we had very negative economic outlook. The property crisis was having a detrimental effect on our society. But something interesting started to happen in the tech sector. Something interesting was happening with entrepreneurs. So we went out and we talked to them, we empathized, we tried to understand where they're at. Turns out their needs, their wants from a bank were very different to what we thought they were. Entrepreneurs of all kinds, shapes and sizes were not looking for loans, overdrafts or credit cards. Turns out their needs were way more simple. They were looking for alternatives to the coffee shops, the kitchens, the borrowed offices they were using to try and get their ideas off the ground. They were looking for a space that they could work from, that they could collaborate, so the entrepreneurial journey was not so lonely. We listened to those needs, we designed for those needs, and in doing so we created our workbenches. Our workbenches began in January 2015. They were quiet at first. It turns out people aren't used to hanging out in a bank. It's not something you do, certainly if you're not a Bank of Ireland customer. But slowly, as we started to evolve, as we started to work our way into the community and talk to entrepreneurs and show them our business was about helping them get ideas off the ground, they started to come. We built it and they came. That was January 2015. 2 years later, we had 6 workbenches across Ireland. The best bit about this story is the first residents at the workbench were a group of guys who had all left big corporations. They had left because they wanted to create something different. We simply gave them the resources, the space, the area to collaborate. That company is called Plink. 2 years ago, it didn't exist. 2 weeks ago, it raised 25 million in its first round of funding. This is the power of design thinking. When you design for people's needs and you pair it with business value, you create value for society. In 2016, we also started to look at the lives of the less fortunate in society, our vulnerable customers. 17,000 Bank of Ireland customers die every year. Is there anything more grave than losing the love of your life? Our team of early design thinkers in Bank of Ireland went out and spoke with them. They sat with them, they heard, and they listened to the pain that they were going through in order to redesign the financial activities that happened during this very stressful period. And it was tough work. Who wants to talk to a bank about losing the love of your life? But we learned an awful lot about the experience these people were going through. We learned about how broken our experience, the experience the bank had designed for the bank, how broken that was. And so we redesigned this experience. Yes, you can go into a branch, you can go online, you can phone, but we want to do something better. So the team created a completely concierge service for those that were recently bereaved. What that meant was family members could literally hand over all of the work that needed to be done around a bereavement. It meant you did not need to go into a branch, you did not go through AML or ID or any of that awful paperwork that you're just not ready to do. But you could come when you wanted to. And the concierge service would allow you to interact with the service at your time. We did a simple thing like we created an automatic fund of €1,000 to avail of at any time. The human value of that is immeasurable, taking away people's pain at a time when they need it most. The business value really doesn't matter. We are in the business now of helping people create value in their own lives. And finally, in 2017, we started to look at the financially included. I'm not talking about low-income families or immigrants. They are exceptionally important. But I'm talking about something in society that we are not talking about. The 500,000 working women today in Ireland who do not have pensions. Women live longer, but are paid less than men. And yet, at the time of retirement, as the future of work starts to change all of the things that we are doing, women will barely be able to cover the cost of filling a tank of petrol or getting their hair cut. So what's the big insight? When we sat and we talked to women of all kinds, guess what? This activity cuts right across all demographics. Being an accountant or an engineer, an educator with a PhD or a social care worker, the one thing in common that we as women do not do, we do not and will not talk about finances. And it's having a grave effect on ourselves and a grave effect on society. How can we expect to have a positive and flourishing society if we cannot provide for ourselves into the future? 2018, we'll be using design thinking to look at very futurist models. As we talk about the threat of AI, which is real, there's a bigger threat to society in the coming years. And the threat is the demise of the middle class. When the robots really do take over, when knowledge workers like yourselves and myself do not have work, how do we provide for ourselves? I'm particularly interested in new models like universal basic income. What does it mean for society to give people an income that they can live on? Interestingly, in some of the pilots that have been rolled out around universal basic income, it's been proven that debt goes down. That's an interesting challenge for a financial services organisation such as Bank of Ireland. But this threat is real, and it's something that we can positively use design thinking to help us with. So in closing, I urge you to do 3 things. 1, I urge you to consider design thinking to create a value in your own lives. As you go back to your businesses, your professions, the boardrooms and the classrooms, consider the impact, the positive way design thinking can help. The second is, we have come a long way since Una Keogh, the very first female stockbroker in the world, an Irish woman, in 1928, started in the Irish Stock Exchange. But we have a long way to go, and financial well-being and talking about our financial well-being is crucial. And third, there is a Bank of Ireland booth on the 2nd floor. We are offering massages in exchange for support of a charity. I urge you to take advantage of it, enjoy a massage, and give back to charity. I've been Lesley Tully. Thank you very much.